Yo, what is up guys? Here with another video. Today we're going to actually be doing a different kind of video. So if you guys don't know, there was actually a tweet made which was like, hey VGC content creators, why don't you make a video out of like the, what's it called, the bracket. Bill had tweeted this. I'll link his Twitter and I'll link Caleb's Twitter down below. Caleb's the guy who made like the graphics for this stuff. So it makes it like very like nice and like visually good to look at. So I'll make sure to link both of them and credit both of them. But what's it called? Basically, we're going to be breaking down every single top 16 bracket of Players Cup. We're going to be talking about what each team's strengths are, who we think is going to win, why we think they're going to win, and all of that. So we're just going to kind of get right into it. Basically, if you guys don't know how it works, Players Cup double elimination. If you get put into losers bracket, you have to play basically twice as many games. People in winners bracket only have to win 2 to progress onto the final stage. People who lose in winners have to win 3 after. So it's kind of a bit tough. But that's kind of how it's going to work out. So let's look over here. If we look over here and we look at the teams, we'll start over here on this part of the bracket with Adi and Mark. So basically between Adi and Mark, the main thing to keep in mind with their matchup is basically Mark. So Mark is always going to want to get like Tailwind up. He's going to want to take advantage of the Kyogre. Zapdos is going to be very good in this matchup. Zapdos is going to be able to pressure the Charizard, the Venusaur, right? Obviously can do some damage to the Groudon. So like that's something that's really important. Also too, in terms of like what Adi has, he has a lot of ability to kind of reduce his Zapdos' damage with like screens. So I do expect screens to make an appearance here. Obviously Groudon's going to be there as well. I'd probably expect it to be a combination of like P2, Grimmsnarl, Groudon, Venusaur, maybe like Incineroar thrown in the mix. The reason why I don't think Charizard is going to be brought is because of its weakness to Kyogre. The only situation where I see the Charizard getting brought is if Mark decides to go Metagross, calling that Adi's not going to bring Charizard. So that's like the main situation where I see that coming into play. Besides that, I think Adi's game plan is pretty straightforward. You're going to want to reduce the damage. You're obviously going to want to get Trick Room up so you can do a lot of damage versus Mark. Mark doesn't really have too much for Trick Room, which is like obviously like going to be a bit detrimental for him. For Mark's end in the matchup, I think like him using Kyogre to its full effectiveness with the Zapdos is going to be very important. I think even Metagross could have a use in this matchup if Trick Room gets set, and then having the Urshifu is obviously very nice to pin the Incineroar and the Porygon 2. Between this matchup, it's a bit tough. I kind of feel like Adi's going to pull out here. Mark, though, did have an undefeated run, so I wouldn't be surprised to see Mark win. I think the Zapdos is going to be like the really big like game changer in this matchup. I think the Zapdos is going to make this matchup like a lot harder for Adi. So between both of them, I'm probably, you know what, actually I think I'll predict Mark. Mark's kind of had a killer game so far, so like he's been playing like really well, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him. But I wouldn't also be surprised if Adi won. Down here, basically between me and Marco. So this is a matchup. I'm not going to talk too much about my own matchup because like that's just something that's a little bit like, obviously you're going to be biased and be like, yeah, I'm going to do well. You know what I mean? The matchup is pretty straightforward. Nothing too crazy. Between both of us, obviously it's just going to be who plays better. So yeah, I'm not going to talk too much about that. Obviously I have confidence in myself. However, you know, like obviously you're going to say that. Then what's it called? We go down. So we're going to see Mike. He's actually using Colossal as well, which is obviously like pretty solid. He's using Zacian Colossal, so his matchup versus John is going to be a little bit different. I kind of expect like John to be able to deal with Colossal pretty well. John's a very good player. He came very close in Players Cup 1 to making it, and I had just beaten him, I remember, to get the spot to play in Players Cup finals, and I'm kind of expecting him to come like full force into this week and like really like try hard. Mike D'Angelo also won a Victory Road event recently, if I'm not mistaken. So obviously like he's also solid. I do kind of expect John to pull this out. John's a very consistent player, very good. His team also gives him a lot of flexibility in terms of how he can adjust. So that's something that Mike obviously has to respect. But yeah, I would say I think John probably has a bit of an edge in this matchup just because of him having Kyogre. Kyogre is a lot tougher to deal with when you have these when you have the Zacian version, because you don't have a restricted that can really deal with Kyogre, which kind of puts you in an awkward spot with Cole. And like he's gonna be forced to bring a Cole mode potentially into the Tornogre, or be forced to bring a Moongus, which can also get sniped pretty like comfortably. So that's going to be a bit of a struggle. I do kind of expect John to pull this one out. Then between Namuko and Wolf, So Wolf doesn't really have a Trick Room matchup besides Torkoal. If Nemuko can find a way to really remove Wolf's Torkoal, or like make it so that it's not efficient in play, and he can like kind of play around the Incineroar, I think it's actually going to be very solid because he's going to have a lot of pressure with the Calyrex. It's looking like the Mimikyu weakens like Shadow Sneak with Weakness Policy Calyrex. That's typically how they're run. So I'm assuming that it's going to be obviously putting on a lot of pressure versus Wolf. Wolf still has the ability to adjust. It's just I think he's going to struggle a little bit with the redirection. I don't think that it's impossible for him by any means. It's just something that Wolf is going to have to respect. Obviously, I don't know the Indeed's item, so if it's safety goggles, it's probably going to give Wolf a little bit more trouble. But between both of these, so like I want to say that I think Nemuko has the advantage, but at the same time, Wolf's obviously a very good player. And purely off of play alone, I think I would probably give it to Wolf. So I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say Wolf, even though he's he doesn't have as much of an advantage in the matchup, I do think he can play well enough to where he's gonna pull it out. And like I do kind of expect that. I also really hope we get to see John versus Wolf. Like I think that match would be really cool, given their teams as well. So it'd be cool to see them play each other, especially too, you know, that like rematch from 2016 Worlds. So that's a winner's bracket. If we look down here now, we're gonna see Jones or Navjeet. Basically, same team as John. Pretty straightforward versus G-Sock. So basically here, the matchup is a little bit tough for Jones in the regard of like he has to sustain a lot of damage, and this team is very good at drawing out damage like early and kind of like slowly whittling them down with Vine Lash. So he's gonna have to find a way to stop G-Sock's offense. G-Sock has a lot of damage, like a ton of damage that he can put out. I do think the Calyrex is going to be really difficult to deal with, specifically because there's no Porygon on this composition. I honestly think, I do have a lot of respect for Jones. I think he's a very good player, but I do think G-Sock's going to pull this out. G-Sock has a lot of offense on his team, and like it's going to be really hard for Jones to sustain, especially because like Metagross, which is like decent versus a lot of these other mons besides Zero Shifu, is going to be pressured by the Calyrex, which is like really difficult. And in the Sun mode, they can Tailwind, right? So there's like a bunch of pressure. Obviously, the Tornogre mode also has some pressure, but I think Jones is gonna have a lot of trouble with this. Even with screens like reducing damage, I still think it's gonna be a bit difficult. Then we go down to losers between Raghav and Ethan. I'm kind of expecting Raghav to struggle a little bit. The only reason why is because of the Rotom Heat. So if there wasn't a Rotom Heat on the team, I think Raghav would be fine here because Double Steel like actually looks pretty good. But the Rotom is going to be like a huge problem. That being said though, on their team, the Charizard does have Ancient Power because I played Raghav earlier. And because he's max Rockfall, he may have enough to deal with the Rotom. Purely off of play, I think Raghav can still pull it out. The main thing that I think is going to be like the deciding factor is like if that Zard gets removed early. If Zard gets removed, the team will really struggle with Rotom. Obviously there's a Groudon as well, but like Groudon can also be reduced by screens. You have like a Gastro, or even you have like, you know, Zacian. So I think it's kind of even. Off of play though, I probably will give it to Raghav. I think that he's going to play well enough to like progress. Especially versus Ethan, so I think it'll be good. Then we have between Zordor and Paul. This one for me is like, I think Paul's just gonna win. So Zordor's team is very interesting. It's like kind of a weird combination of mons. I played this team a bunch on ladder. I just don't think it has what it takes to deal with Paul. I think Paul's just gonna really just run through him with like Sun. Specifically the Zard looks really difficult for Zordor to deal with. I don't really know how he stops it. He doesn't really have a direct check to it, which is going to be like very problematic. And Charizard's really just going to like kind of put on a ton of pressure. Even the Umbreon in the back to deal with the Metagross and like kind of end game with Moonlight, like it's just very scary. And like obviously Alecki too can put on a bunch of pressure versus Suicune, so like there's just so much that can be done here against Zordor. So I really just expect Paul to pull that out. Then we have between Colin and Jackson. So Jackson does have Thunderous, which in the matchup actually gives him a little bit of an advantage. The main reasoning why is because he's going to have the ability to hit the Zard for a lot of damage. The main thing, though, that comes into play here, too, is that, like, Colin can't really take Instant here. And if he does, he has to be very careful with the Thunderous. I do think that it might come down to some sleep powders as well, and that may be a big factor in there. But yeah, I almost want to say like so Colin's a very good player, so like I wouldn't be surprised if he wins, but I do think Jackson has a bit of the advantage in terms of the matchup. I think having the Thunderous is like gonna put a lot of pressure on Colin and force him to play like differently. I'm assuming the Thunderous is Assault Vest, so if the Charizard can live the Max Lightning, it might actually be pretty good. But yeah, for the most part, I think Jackson's gonna be able to pull it out. Not because Colin's not playing well, but just because the Thunderous matchup's like very tough with this team. Obviously, they have the Groudon as well, which is gonna put on some pressure. But I think like Intimidates from like Jackson can spam Intimidates while also attacking with Thunderous, and Colin cannot respond with Intimidates basically, which is like a huge problem. I think he might be forced to bring his Grimmsnarl. But yeah, so let's say, so as I mentioned, I predicted who was gonna win from each. So let's say from here, right? I'm gonna skip this area because obviously that's involving me. I don't want to be biased there, but what's it called down here? Between Mike and John, I do think John's gonna be able to pull it out. Between Wolf and Alec, I'm gonna say I think Wolf's gonna be able to pull it out. Between John and Wolf, I'm kind of expecting John to actually pull this out, just because his team is a little bit more well-rounded and it's going to be able to deal with like Wolf's Sun mode more aggressively. However, the Thunders is going to be something that John's going to have to respect, which I think he could struggle with, but I do think John's going to be able to pull it out. Between Jones and G-Sock, I do think G-Sock's going to progress. Between Raghav and Ethan, I think Raghav's going to progress. Between G-Sock and Raghav, I do think that Raghav can definitely do this because he has P2 and he has like the Grimmsnarl. However, I do think that G-Sock's probably gonna play well enough to like put him in an advantageous position, to where like I think it's actually going to be like problematic for you know, for Raghav. Yeah, so I'd probably give that to G-Sock. I do think Raghav can win that though, so like I don't want to completely count him out. Obviously, he can still do well as well, but yeah. The main thing that honestly seems annoying is like the Venusaur for G-Sock, but the thing is like he has obviously the Thunderous with Airstream. The weakness policy Venusaur kind of discourages that a little bit, but even then like it can't really respond to Thunderous. And then if there's a psychic move on this Calyrex, obviously it's gonna be a little bit annoying. Obviously I said Paul was gonna win between them. Let's say Jackson wins between those. This matchup's a bit of a toss-up, honestly. I do think that like it's kind of the similar situation. Like Thundurus is very good in this matchup. Although I do think Paul has like, it's like tough. I still think that Jackson has the advantage there in the matchup, if I'm being honest. I just think it's a little bit more advantageous for them. So yeah, I would say I think Jackson's gonna pull it out. So yeah, so pretty much it would be between Jackson and Paul. I think Jackson's gonna pull it out, so that means Jackson's going to move on to here, which would be like playing against loser of week 6, which as we mentioned would be Wolf, like, or in my prediction, right, would be Wolf. I think Wolf and Jackson, I think Wolf is going to be able to pull it out. He has enough tools to deal with Jackson. He has a Zacian. He obviously has the Thunderous as well, which is like very good for him. And he also has the same Venusaur like Torkoal mode to like pressure. So I do think Wolf's gonna be able to pull it out there. Then on the top bracket, I mentioned I think G-Sock is gonna be able to win. When G-Sock progresses, he's gonna be playing loser of W5, which, like, to be honest, like, isn't something I can really predict. So that's not something that I want to predict. If I had to pick the top 4, it would definitely have Jonathan. It would definitely have Wolf, and I mean, obviously I have confidence in myself to be in that top 4, which is just like normal. And then what's it called? I think it would be between I think G-Sock or what's it called? Whoever got sent to losers from here would make it. So that'd pretty much be it. I wouldn't be surprised to see Adi in top 4 either. But yeah, that would probably be my predictions for NA, who I would think would make it. Jonathan and Wolf are my like for sure predictions. I think they're gonna make it. For the other two, I think it's a little bit up in the air. I think G-Sock can make a really deep run if he just keeps playing well. But yeah, so that's gonna be the NA bracket. Let's go over here to the EU bracket. So the EU bracket's really interesting. Some of the teams are like really crazy. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna drink some water. Yeah, so we go over here. Kosti obviously is using a screens team with Gastrodon. Gastrodon kind of made a huge resurgence, honestly, so kind of nutty. But we're gonna go see obviously Kosti versus Francesco. So I think here Kasi has the advantage, especially because he has the Rotom Heat. I don't know if the Charizard comes equipped with a move to beat the Rotom Heat, but if not, like that's gonna give him a huge, like that's gonna give Francesco a huge problem. I also think that Zacian 2 is gonna put on a lot of pressure, and like Dragapult as well. So like Dragapult, Rotom, Zacian, and then like Grimmsnarl, I think is like gonna be like very good in this matchup. Then we look down here, Raider and what's it called, Suzez. So between both, I do think that Cole has a bit of advantage in this matchup. However, there are some ways that like it can be countered. So like the main thing is that because it's Landorus I, so like it's the special Landers, it actually pressures like what's it called? It actually pressures the Zacian like kind of decently as well. I don't think he's gonna take it, but it could be something that like comes as an adjustment. Also, too, one thing that makes him match up a little bit difficult for Roberto is the Amoonguss Rage Powder plus Hydreigon. So you could obviously go for Rage Powders, go for Max Quakes to kind of shut down the Cole. And it shuts it down because if the Amoonguss dies but you kill the Cole, you're still in a positive position. And then we keep looking down. Between those two, though, I think, what's it called? I actually think Jesus is gonna win because he has a matchup with the Hydreigon. I think the Hydreigon's like very good here, next to Mungus, so I think that's gonna be a huge problem. And then you take Incineroar in the back to just kind of clean up. Then we have between Taryn and Pokéraf. I think here I'd probably say I think Taryn has a bit of the matchup advantage because he has a restricted that doesn't set the sun, and he also has like 2 mons that benefit off of the sun, so it's gonna like kind of give him a bit of an advantage there. Also a mon that really pressures the opposing Groudon, and he can also run something like he can even bring something like Thundurus if he wants to put a bit more pressure on the opposing Zard. So I think he has a lot of options there. And then I think yeah, so I think Taryn's gonna be able to pull that out. Then we look over here between Leonardo, Bonanimi, and Gilgamesh. In this matchup, I do think Sun is very favored, so I'd probably give this up to Leonardo. Like, not really much thought going to it because like there's just so much pressure that Leo is gonna have, so it's just gonna make it really easy. So we go down to the what's it called, losers bracket. We're gonna see David Kutash versus Matty Morgan. Just due to sheer consistency, I'm giving this to Kutash. Every single time he's been able to pull through and just like make it to finals, so I'd give him the benefit of the doubt there. Even though the matchup isn't necessarily that easy, I do think that he's gonna be able to like do well. It's funny because versus Kutash, it's like the Sun mode is really annoying, but you also have a Dragapult that kind of pins it, and you have a Kyogre, so like it's gonna be a bit difficult. But I do think Kutash sheerly off of play is probably gonna be able to like nab like a spot this time. Then you see Daniel Otskin. So really interesting. I played this team on ladder a bunch, and I remember saying to yeah, I was laddering with Fevzi one day, and I was using the Cole team obviously. And we see this team, I'm like, dude, there's no way someone brings this to EU bracket, because we were practicing and I was trying to convince them to use it, use Cole. And I was like, dude, there's no way someone is going to bring, like, this team that we're playing against and losing to on ladder to the tournament. And then we see this exact team in top 16, which I thought was really funny. Between that and Hippolyte, I do think, actually, that Daniel has a bit of a matchup advantage here. Obviously, Palkia is, like, annoying, but, like, he has a Dragonite. And he could just max the Dragonite instead, so that's something that Hippolyte's gonna have to respect. I do think it's a bit of like a toss-up though, because obviously there's a Mamo as well, which makes it like really difficult for the Dragonite. And if it's Sash Mamo too, it also pressures Cole. So it's kind of like up in the air there. Mamo's actually very good versus majority of this team, besides the Kyogre. I think it's a bit tough. I do think Daniel's going to be able to pull it out because of the Dragonite having pressure on the Palkia, but I wouldn't be surprised if Hippolyte's able to pull it out either. Then we have Sanvi versus Roxanne. So this is going to be a really good game. I'm actually really excited to see who wins between these two. I do think that in this matchup, it's so because he doesn't have any Veltal, he doesn't have a swap into Max Quake, so he's forced into a bit more mind games. Roxanne is what I mean by that. And Sanvi is going to have a bit more of the advantage in terms of like putting that pressure on. I kind of expect Roxanne to win, but I think I'm going to give it to Sanvi purely because he doesn't have a ground immune. It's going to give him a lot of trouble, and he's going to have a lot less swaps, which means Sanvi is going to be able to put a lot more pressure on the opponent. Then we have between Wenti and Julio. I'd probably be comfortable giving this to Julio, to be honest. Or Julio, my bad. I'm probably pronouncing that wrong. He also won X9 League 1, so I should know his name. I do know his name. I just keep messing it up. But yeah, I probably would feel comfortable giving it to Julio. Yeah, I think looking at the matchup, I think it's like pretty straightforward for him. Like Dragapult's gonna be really huge here. He does have to be careful with the Thunderous, I think. So the Regieleki is obviously gonna help with that. I do think though, because Wenti's not using Venusaur, it actually does give Regieleki a lot of use in this matchup, which is gonna be like a little bit difficult. From Julio, I kind of expect to see like Regieleki, Dragapult, Incin, like Kyogre, or like some combination of those. And yeah, I would expect them to pull it out. Then we can go back to the top and be like, okay, well, who's gonna win between Costi and Jesus? I do think that between both, I think Costi has an advantage. The Rotom Heat's like really good, so I'd say you know, I think Costi can get top 4. He has a decent like bracket he can run through, so I really think he can make it through. Then over here we have Taryn versus Leonardo. Purely because of the Thunderous mode, I do think that Taryn's gonna have a bit of an advantage, so I do expect him to pull it out and make the top 4. So for the top bracket, my predictions would be Guillermo, or like Costi and Taryn to make it. Down here, if we're expecting Kutesh to make it, right, obviously he's gonna be playing versus loser of 4, right? So where is that? It would be Gilgamesh. So between, I think Kutesh is still going to have this matchup. It's Sun versus the same matchup, so I don't expect much would change. Then obviously it would be between Daniel or Hippolyte. I kind of leave this one up in the air. If it's Daniel versus Raphael, I think he's going to be able to win pretty comfortably, to be honest. And then if it's Hippolyte, I do think he's also going to be able to beat Pokéraph pretty comfortably because of the Rotom Heat. And obviously Palkia is like very annoying as well for the Charizard. Then over here, we're going to see Sanvi and we're going to see Roxanne. Obviously, if we're assuming Sanvi is going to win, that means Sanvi moves on. Let's see. Week 2. He's going to be playing versus another Colossal. This one, I think, actually is going to beat Sanvi because it actually has tools to deal with it. The only thing it doesn't have is Incineroar. However, it does still have, like, obviously a Landorus, which can, like, swap in the ground moves. And it can put on a bit of pressure. That being said, though, I think the fact that it's lacking, like a fire type mon is that it's actually pretty weak to Sun as well. Actually, no, I'd give that to Sanvi. I'd probably give this to Sanvi. I think Sanvi would be able to move on. Then, obviously, between Francisco and Julio, I'd probably give it to. Let's see. I'd probably give it to Julio. Similar matchup. I think because there's no Thunderous, it actually makes it easier. The Umbreon's obviously a bit of a concern, but that's just something that you can prepare for and like kind of end game with Kyogre. So yeah, and then basically, if we're saying it's going to be between what's it called, Sanvi and Julio, I do think between Sanvi and Julio, like it's gonna be close. They're both very good. I do think that. This is tough. I think that Sanvi's probably going to be able to pull it out. Just because, like, Sanvi's obviously a very good player. However, like, Julio's a very good player as well. That one I'm not too confident calling. I'd kind of be fine. Like, I'd see them going either way. Then let's say we have Daniel versus Kutesh. Between Daniel and Kutesh, I do think that Kutesh is going to be able to pull it out. He's just, like, very consistent. However, he doesn't have that much for Colossal. So I almost would be inclined to say I'm actually kind of confident in odds. So yeah, we'll kind of leave that one up in the air. Then let's say loser of W5, that would be Jesus. So Jesus versus Daniel. I do think that what's it called? I do think that Jesus has a bit of the matchup advantage with the Hydreigon versus a lot of these mons. Max Quick to pressure the Colossal. Dragon move the pressure the Dragonite, and then what's it called? Ground move the pressure the Regieleki. And then obviously Lapras too is just like good. So I do see Jesus being able to pull it out versus Otz. And then if we're saying that Julio's the one that wins, I think between what's it called? I think Julio would be able to beat Bonanimi, he has to be really careful with the Umbreon. If it's Sanvi, I think that Sanvi should also probably be able to do it. I think his matchup's like fine because he has the Charizard and the Lando. But yeah, I think it's gonna be a bit of a toss up. In any of the Sun games, in reality, they're kind of a toss up because it's just how the Sun players play with it. So yeah, so my predictions for top, Kosti, Taryn. I think it's gonna be between Sanvi or Julio in the bottom bracket, and I think it's gonna be between Kutesh, probably Kutesh, or I think Jesus can make a deep run. I don't know much about him, but basically based on his team and his matchups all across, I think they're like pretty solid to where I think he can make it. So that is going to be the EU bracket. Then we can go over here to the Latin America bracket. So look over here. This bracket's like way more aggressive. But we can kind of just break these down. I'm gonna what's it called? Kind of run them down a bit faster just so that we can kind of get through all these in the video and it's not too long for you guys. But yeah, so we look over here. It's kind of a Calyrex mirror, which is kind of like really annoying. I kind of expect like the Regigigas mode to be coming from Beto here, and I expect the Tailwind offense mode to be coming from Hugo here. I do think that Beto has a bit of an advantage with the Regigigas because it's like immune to the opposing Calyrex. However, because he has no way to reduce damage, the Urshifu and Tailwind can do a bunch of damage. I'm gonna give this to Hugo just because the Urshifu and Tailwind can do like a ton of damage to this team, along with the Calyrex and like the Regieleki. Then we look down here in W2. So it's between Hugo and Orlando. I do think that Hugo is going to be able to pull this out. Tornogre is like pretty decent versus Sun. Also, the other benefit that I think in this matchup is that there's a Kartana. Kartana is actually very good versus Sun, especially once the Zard gets removed, because it snipes the Groudon and is an Airstream for Venusaur, assuming there's no Weather Ball. It can deal with the Regieleki, and it can go for Sacred Swords onto the Umbreon. So I'd probably be comfortable giving it to Hugo. Then between Gabriel and what's it called? Isla, or Illa, however you pronounce that. I would probably be more comfortable giving it to... So, like, Agate's a very good player, and he's qualled multiple times. So, like, he's, like, very solid. I do think he'll struggle a little bit versus the Lapras if it comes. However, I do think that, like, Gabriel can probably, like, pull it out. I think he'll be fine. And then it'll send, like, another cold down to losers. And then you see between Dua and between Kano, between both of those, I do think the... What's it called? The Calyrex team has a bit of an advantage in this matchup. However, there is an Urshifu, obviously. I think like Thunderous Calyrex is just gonna put on a lot of pressure versus Dua that he's gonna have to really respect. Because he has no Tailwind answer either. Like they could just go Tailwind Spectrier and then Tailwind Calyrex and then just go Thunderous cleanup with Rotom. So that's gonna be something that Felipe is gonna have to respect. So I'd probably give this one to Kano, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Felipe do it, like maybe like through weaving in like sucker punches versus the Cali, getting in a wicked blow, like kind of positioning himself correctly. Then down here, Carlos Ruano and Estefan Valdebenito, there we go, I almost said that wrong. Between both of them, so this team's like really cool from Carlos. I actually really like it. Chomp's like a very good mon. Tailwind plus Chomp is really bad for this team, because it can snipe the Kingdra, assuming it's like Life Orb, like Dragon move. If it's not Dragon move, then this is a bit different. But even then, Tailwind Kartana is like annoying, and obviously like the Kyogre does like a ton of damage as well. And on top of that, the Max Quakes too are really just gonna like stack up on Carlos's side. So I do see the Tailwind offense mode being a little bit trouble for Estefan. I don't know the exact move set on the Volcarona as well, so I think that would probably like add something depending on what it is. But yeah, I do think that I would probably expect Carlos to be able to pull this out. He does have a pretty solid, well-balanced team, so I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, then we go down to Martin Cho. So he's running like very similar to what I ran, but he has an Amoonguss over the Rillaboom. I do expect this to beat Lapdog. You're usually pretty fine versus Lapdog. The Kingdra is going to make this very annoying, though, because it like makes it really hard for Cole to break through. But because he has an Yveltal and an Amoonguss, I kind of have confidence that he's going to be able to, like, beat it. However, I wouldn't be surprised to see, like, Steg win either. But, like, I'm going to go with Martin here just because Cole, obviously, on paper, has, like, a better matchup here. Then between AJ and Rena, I actually do expect Rena to win. Evoltol teams are typically positive versus a Tornogre, mostly because of their ability to reduce damage. And if it's Sash Alecki, it's even more positive. Also, too, like Amoonguss obviously is like very disruptive, so I would kind of expect Rena to be able to pull this out. They do have like majority of the same mons though, which is like really interesting. Besides, like I think they have 3 different mons. 3 different mons, yeah. But yeah, and then we go down between Andres and Jesus. I'd probably expect. I think between both of these, because of the Rotom Wash, Jesus has a bit of a matchup advantage here. And they both have Dragapult, and like obviously there's an Umbreon and a Zacian on Jesus' side. So yeah, I kind of expect Jesus to bring it out. So if we're saying in W1 that what's it called? Hugo is gonna lose. Or my bad, I think I said Beto was gonna lose. Either way, like whoever loses, let's say they get sent down to losers, they're playing versus Trubitron. I do think that his team is actually very good at soaking up like offensive moves. However, because they're both really offensive Calyrex teams, I think he's gonna lose regardless. So I kind of would expect either one of them to progress, whoever it is. Then between week 2 or like not week 2, but like W2. Between Orlando, Hugo, I said I think Hugo's gonna win. If Orlando gets sent down to losers, I would expect Orlando to be able to. It's gonna be even. Like the Umbreon's a big problem for Yveltal, which is like something that Rena's gonna have to respect. I do think it's a bit of an even matchup. However, I do think the Charizard's gonna be a little too much for Rena to deal with. It's gonna be really annoying to deal with because you won't have the benefit of you won't have the benefit of something like a Garchomp that can actually like shut down Zard before it gets to attack. So then over here, what's it called? Up here, we're saying Martin Cho is gonna pull it out, right? Loser of W3, we're thinking that Cole is gonna be sent down the lower bracket with Lapdog, obviously. Between both of these, I do think that the Yveltal Cole team probably will have a bit of an advantage. I just see it having a little bit more flexibility. The Amoonguss obviously is like going to be annoying as well to deal with, which I think can actually like put on a ton of pressure. Also, the only form of side proc for Guido is actually the Dragapult. So if they were to lead like Aqua Jet with the Urshifu, it just actually straight up beats Guido's setup or Guido's setup. Yeah, but yeah, it's or Guido setup. I think that's how you pronounce it. But yeah. I think it just straight up beats it. Then over here, let's say Carlos moves on. They're playing against W4. If we're saying Duo Roxas loses, I think between Carlos and them, I think Carlos is going to be able to pull it out. Tailwind offense just seems like a little too much for this team to handle. So yeah, so let's say it's between Carlos and Martin. Between Carlos and Martin, I think that I do think because of the Amoonguss, it's gonna give Martin a bit more problems dealing with the what's it called? With the opposing mons. Like the Chomp is a huge problem for Colossal. To where I actually would probably give it to Carlos. If it was just a Tornogre, I don't think it would be as bad, but because it's a Chomp, I think it's gonna be really annoying. So I kind of expect Carlos to be able to move on. Then if we keep going down in the bracket, I do think between what's it called? Between like all the people, so yeah, I said that Carlos will be able to beat. Yep, okay, cool. And then down here we're gonna see Rena. We said they were gonna lose to Orlando, correct? Like yeah, I think Orlando's gonna be able to pull it out here. Then between both of these guys, like I said, I think Jesus had a bit of a better team here. And then if Hugo sent down to losers bracket, I actually do see this team losing to Hugo. So let's say it's Hugo versus let's say it's Hugo versus Orlando, right? So like over there, I think that it's like kind of tough because they both like have their own like benefits. The double dark is going to be like really annoying for the Spectre. However, there's like obviously like Urshifu in the team. I do think Hugo should be able to edge it out over here. So let's say it's Hugo over here and then it's Carlos over here playing loser of week 5 or round 5, whatever. Between Alberto and Hugo, like I said, I think Hugo is going to be able to pull this out. I think he just has a bit of an advantage in terms of what he can do. He has the Regieleki plus Kyogre. So then let's say that, what's it called? Beto gets sent down. It's gonna be Beto versus Carlos. I do think, due to the nature of their teams, I do think Carlos is gonna be able to pull it out because like Beto's team is like very, very aggressive, so it relies on getting a lot of damage up. I do think that Carlos has enough tools to like shut that down pretty like easily, so I wouldn't be surprised to see him pull out. I think Carlos is gonna grab the spot. Between like obviously this, I think Hugo is gonna be able to grab the spot in this side. Hugo Nacimiento, I think is his name. And then between all of these, I do think that Agati is gonna be able to clench a spot. Then obviously that would send what's called Alejandro Diaz down here. He would be playing versus in this timeline. He'd be playing versus Orlando, right? If he's playing versus Orlando, then I do think that he has a bit of an advantage with the Rotom Heat. However, like it depends what's on the moveset. Also the Thunderous. So I'd be comfortable giving it to Alejandro down there. And if it's versus like anyone else, so let's say like you know, obviously someone else was down there, like for example you know, Hugo gets him down there, right? Hugo like versus Alejandro is gonna be a little bit tough. I think Hugo has enough to deal with Alejandro, but it's kind of just like the problem is it's like Tailwind stuff. Or not Hugo. What am I saying? Oh, my bad. I got this wrong. I mixed it up a little bit. So like Guido down here, right? Like, yeah, it's a bit tough. It's like, cause it's like they both have like tools, but they're like, yeah, I don't know. It's like kind of up in the air. The guaranteed ones I think are gonna be like Agati. I think Hugo is going to be able to grab it. Hugo Nacimiento. And then, yeah, I think like those two are clenched. I also kind of expect, like, see, I want to say like Beto's going to like make it. But at the same time too, like I mentioned, the matchup he's going to be playing versus, he's going to have a bunch of trouble. I'd say the only confirmed ones I think are going to be Agati and Hugo Nacimiento. I don't know enough about the region to like really give like full insight. All I can look at it is from like the team matchups themselves. So yeah, that's gonna be that one. And then you're gonna look over here. So between all of these, I'm not gonna go too in depth on these because these teams are a little bit more like cracked. So like they're a little bit harder to predict. And I don't know the players at all. Like I literally know like 1, 2. I've heard of this player. I know this player. Okay, so I know 4 of these players. So I can't really do it based off of skill and like knowledge of skill. But yeah. Over here, I think that in this matchup specifically, I think that Jupiter is going to be able to pull it out. I think Jupiter just has an advantage in the matchup with the Calyrex and also the Colossal mode. I just think it's going to be really difficult for Trent to stop. Down here, I think the double weather mode is like very solid here, and I think it's going to be very good versus Yov, specifically because of the Venusaur. I think it's going to be very solid, so I do kind of expect them to be able to like pull it out. Down here, between Dervo and Mufasa, I'm kind of expecting Mufasa to win. Solgaleo definitely has an edge in this matchup as long as he can remove the Torkoal or the Venusaur. So I would kind of expect the Solgaleo to just be able to like beat this. Then down here, we're going to see, obviously, it's a bit of an interesting matchup. I do think that Alex has a bit of the advantage in terms of like what he can do versus this team. Like this team's very Intimidate weak, which is like a huge problem for it. So yeah. Then down here, we're going to see Jordan versus Sam. Sam, just based off of quality of player alone, I think is just going to be able to progress. James versus Phil. I think James is going to be able to do more with his team. The Gastro's a little bit annoying, but I think like Sun's going to be very annoying for Phil. Then between Mash and Daniel, I do think that in this matchup that Mash is going to have a bit of an advantage. Now you guys could say, oh, well, he has Calyrex was the same thing kind of versus the Dialga team. The difference I think here is that what it's paired with, the Cinderace, isn't going to be as good as breaking through things because of the Intimidates, like the double Intimidate spam, and also the Urshifu. So like I think there's a little bit more to deal with like Daniel's team that makes it a bit easier. Then between Karaku and Hobbit, I do think that Hobbit has a bit of an advantage if he can get Trick Room up. However, the Rotom Heat's going to be like a huge problem for him, to the point where I think he could just straight up lose to the Rotom Heat plus screens. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the Rotom Heat plus screens kind of body him. Because that just looks very problematic. I think he needs to get in his like Calyrex and get some close combats up. In terms of the rest, I don't really want to predict too far in. If you want my takes of like who's going to make it, I think Sam, James, and what's it called? I would bet on Sam and James making... Oh, actually, they can't. Okay, so actually between both of these, I'd probably bet on James. And then over here in this top bracket, if I had to pick, like, people that I think would make it out of these three, I would probably bet on the double weather team. And over here, I'd probably bet on the standard lapdog team. Maybe so. No, actually, I think Solgaleo. I think Solgaleo would actually be like, yeah, Solgaleo's like very positive versus literally all these teams, to with the point where I think he actually may just have a guaranteed like run, because like there's so many things that like Solgaleo matches well into here. But yeah, so that's like pretty much it, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. I know this was a bit of a longer video. I kind of wanted to break this down and really like explain each reasoning, logic, mon, all that stuff. The reason why I was a bit shorter on Australia is because like I don't really know the players, and like the teams are a little bit weirder, so they're like not in my comfort zone as much. But I just know some of the players and like who I expect kind of to make it through. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this breakdown. We'll see what happens this weekend. Obviously I'll be playing as well. Thank you guys for watching the video, guys, and I will see you guys on the next video. Peace out.